So where we want to start off with today is kind of just like a brief introduction to our panelists here. We got Genetically Modified Skeptic, Prophet Azad, Telltale Atheist. Each of them bring a unique view to the whole subject of coming out of the closet or being in the closet. So this is going to be a really great panel. So GM Skeptic, why don't you start off by telling us, exactly how you were in the closet and then how you came out?
So, I mean, like you guys have probably gathered, I was raised Christian fundamentalist, and a lot of you guys have already asked me questions about my video called "I'm an Atheist Activist in the Closet." It seems like it makes no sense at all, right? How are you in the closet, but you're also an activist at the same time? So, by that, what I say is, I am not completely out, and I'm not completely in the closet. So, 22,000 something people know who I am and know me as an atheist. So I guess the majority of the people I've ever interacted with in my life now think of me that way. But family, except for immediate family, all still think I'm basically a fundamentalist. And there have been some very creative ways that I have navigated the conversation, beating around the bush, sometimes leading prayers I think I led a prayer at like Thanksgiving or something not too long ago, things like that. Because when it's not the right time, it's not the right time. But we'll get to talk about when it is, that kind of thing. So it's a strange thing to navigate for me. I think I'll be completely out of the closet in less than a year or two. But for right now, I'm in a weird situation that we'll get to be able to talk about a bit.
Well, I was in a similar situation in that I grew up fundamentalist as well, Pentecostal, the kind that really values making baby noises, and that was my entire life. So I went to Christian school, Christian church, and everything, and I really didn't know anything different. And it was almost immediately when I started going to college and being exposed to real information that it became a very slow process of realizing that I didn't quite believe, and I would say I was more or less completely in the closet for about 10 years, and as a content creator, probably for about a year. I only recently very openly came out to everybody a matter of a few months ago, and actually made a video almost immediately after it happened about the experience and what I learned from it. And I'm still, we'll get into this more later, but I'm still kind of in the closet as a content creator because I don't necessarily want that part of my life out. So.
Yeah, as far as I go, I was isolated as a younger kid, didn't really have much of a social life. And that created this drive in me where I wanted to hang out with worldly people, as Jehovah's Witnesses would call them, right? So I ended up going to high school, and I started getting worldly friends. I got a worldly girlfriend, and they did not like that. They thought something was up with me, so what the elders did was they had some of the kids in my congregation spy on me and watch what I was doing and report back. And they eventually created, they started this judicial committee. It's like 3 elders get together and decide whether you get to stay in and talk to your family or you're just thrown out, like trash. So ultimately, they decided to throw me out like trash, but it ended up turning out, for the best in the end. Currently, I am actually still in the closet to some people, but I'm going to get into that later on, so that's where I am now.
All right. Well, one of the things that's pretty prominent is that in-between state of being a believer and being not a believer, being in the closet. So I'm kind of curious, what was going through y'all's heads, like as you were a non-believer, but also surrounded by religious family and friends, and you couldn't necessarily, profess that worldview?
So when religious topics come up, you're sitting there nodding along, it looks all fine. I mean, this is what they see. And inside, I'm screaming like John was 10 minutes ago. And I'm sure that you guys have probably had experiences like that with coworkers, with family, whatever. I'm seeing some nods. Yeah, just internally screaming. And it feels like this cognitive dissonance. Sometimes it feels like it's dishonest. You feel like, you're not being your true self, and there's something inside us that says that that's not okay. So it's hard. And I think that the main thing that helps me to get through that still is just to be able to have community. So that's why we have you guys here. That's why, I'm here with John and all the other creators. But trying to avoid isolation and deal with that screaming voice in your head, sometimes we talk about some pretty heavy stuff for like 6 or 7 hours straight, and we have to do that. We have to vent because we can't do it other places.
My experience was a little different in that when I say I was a closet atheist for about 10 years, a lot of that time I wouldn't even identify to myself as an atheist. I was kind of in that in-between stage. It's very much a continuum, and you start to disbelieve. And when I was first going to college, it would feel physically painful to hear professors say something that disagreed with what I've been taught my whole life, and to be confronted with that and kind of know it was more true than I wanted to admit to myself. They weren't all evolutionist idiots the way I was taught in Christian school for 12 years. They actually had sensible things to say, and that was very difficult. And so to me, it was more a process of recognizing that what I believed wasn't as true as I thought and trying to wrestle that to the back of my mind. And it was more of conflict within myself. It was only within the last few years that I actually took on that label, came out to my brother, who himself had been an atheist for a while. And so to me, it was a bit more smooth. And being, as what Drew politely calls me, a actual adult, meaning I'm old, I was in I was in a completely different place. My relationship with my parents was different. All the stuff that was at stake was a little different. But we'll move on to that later.
Yeah, I think that coming out was a little bit different for me because I was kind of forced out, of course, right? It was kind of a gradual thing for me, finally realizing that it wasn't true. The thing that really pulled me out of the whole thing actually was my sister, who is sitting back there. Oh, she's over there now.
Here.
Yeah. Her husband said to me, or her ex-husband said to me, Jehovah's Witnesses actually owned a mansion where they built it for like Moses and stuff when they get resurrected, and it was just like I started to realize like how crazy the things were, right? But up until that moment, for years before that, I had been kicked out and mistreated by them, but I still believed it. I could not let go of it. And so yeah, that is how it went for me. It took a long time for me to realize that it wasn't true, but anyways, eventually I got to where I am now, so pretty happy with that.
Well, I was going to say awesome, but that was horrible. You had to go through that. But I'm kind of curious, what did you guys do to like hide your non-belief? Like I know Drew kind of touched on that here a little bit ago.
Yeah, so I've led a lot of prayers as an atheist, and it's funny because it feels kind of the same, and you can sound the same. People that could have spoken in tongues back in the day can still speak in tongues now. Godless Iowan speaks in tongues on his channel, and it's hilarious. He's an atheist. He used to be a Pentecostal preacher. And so, you can go through the motions when you've been brought up in it your whole life. It's really easy to play the part. It's not hard. I mean, you have that voice screaming at you inside not to do it, but you can. Another thing is, making videos has made it a lot harder. And, I'm motivated to keep doing what I'm doing, and I've talked to you guys about that. And it's because of, the love comments that I get. But when people come over, so, a couple weekends ago, or when I was in Singapore, I don't know if you guys saw my Singapore video, but when I was in Singapore, we had some friends just come stay at our apartment because they were coming from college, and we gave them a nice place to crash and hang out in the DFW area because it's better than East Texas. So I had to take down my entire studio and my camera and everything, just get it all out of there so that they have no idea that I make videos in there. Because once one question is asked, when do the questions stop? What do you make videos about? So, or why do you have this camera? Okay, oh, so you make videos. What do you make videos about? Where do they go? Can I see one? That wouldn't be okay. So a lot of you guys have snuck away from home, snuck away from parents to be here. I do that kind of stuff too. Not as much lately because my main community is you guys now. But for a long time, it's all been sneaking around, sneaking away.
I only had a very brief period of time where I was actually trying to sneak it, and it was in the earliest stages where I became curious about atheism to the point that I would start watching YouTube videos. It seems like that's a pretty common way to start first being exposed. So my brother had shown me Non-Stamp Collector, or I'd seen it through his Facebook, one of my favorites of all times. And I wouldn't even watch it at home. I would watch it at work after hours in my office so that my wife would never see. She has an on-again, off-again relationship with Jesus.
Did you do incognito tabs?
I'm not that sophisticated.
Okay, I was going to say.
Just Control-Shift-N, man.
Yeah.
I just assumed she'd never go into my office and see what I watched on that computer. But yeah, so I hid that for a period of time, and soon after I got divorced, I had a brief flare-up of religious feeling, which happens sometimes after weird traumatic things. But I got into YouTubing pretty soon after that and did a lot of the same thing, putting away my stuff, mostly for my kids, cleaning up everything really fast before they got home from school. They wondered, one of my first projects was a Lego animation thing, and so they wondered why I had this really cool Jabba the Hutt Lego thing in my room once they saw it, and I was kind of trying to hide all that from them, but yeah, I think that's just about it. I had a little bit of curiosity about what some of the equipment in my house is, because I still haven't come out as a creator, but yeah, a little more simple for me.
So I kind of talked about this a little bit a minute ago, where I was just kind of kicked out, but I want to point something out here. Terrible things did happen to me, but the reason I talk about those things is because terrible things are happening to all of us. I want you guys to understand that I've been there. I know. I mean, I know what it's like to have to hide things or to be kicked out. I understand that. That is why I talk about it on my channel. Things are going better for me right now in my life than they ever have been. So that is what I hope you guys can look forward to, is better days. That's all I had to say about it.
So, how did you guys plan coming out?
So I was just talking about this at the VIP table, actually. So I studied psychology, I have a counseling psychology degree, and one concept that we always went over and really stressed was boundaries, and creating healthy boundaries and kind of constructing conversations and times to have conversations rather than just having them. So my parents kind of pushed my wife and I into meeting with them and talking about things, or else basically we were going to get badgered forever. And so there was no point in trying to hide it anymore. It was going to be harder to hide it than to just rip the Band-Aid off. So planning coming out, they kind of got the drop on me a little bit, but the main thing that we did was just say, so once you know this, you're not going to be able to unknow this, and you probably are going to wish that you could forget it, which I've been told, by the way. And another thing is, there are other family members that really don't need to know because they can't keep a secret and it doesn't need to go everywhere right now. So with what I'm about to tell you, I need you guys to keep it to yourself. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but you can't know. And of course, my parents are very loving and wanted to know and wanted to support me if something was wrong, and I appreciate that because not everybody has that. A lot of people don't. So I basically said, you know, anytime we're going to talk about this stuff, I came out to them and it was this long, drawn-out, well, you believe we came from nothing, all that stuff, the classics. And after that, it was basically, so we had a somewhat constructive conversation, very few tears and no yelling at all, which is amazing. But if we're going to talk about this stuff, we're meeting up to talk about it. We're talking about it in person. We're deciding the kind of approach that we're going to have. You're going to have your questions ready. I'm going to have, you know, I'll answer questions, and if you have more questions, then we'll discuss. We need to keep our time limit to a certain, you know, length, and we're not doing any of this stuff over the phone. You're not emailing me about this stuff, and it goes both ways because my parents don't want to hear about all my like atheist stuff. You know, they're probably going to actually be proud of me for helping like some big community thing come together and being generally nice to people, but they don't want to hear about how I was saying, you know, that talking about my stupid hate comments and theists are dumb and all this kind of stuff. They don't want to hear that. And I don't want to hear them. I don't want them to proselytize to me, because the only thing that I would do would be to ignore them. Because I could try street epistemology, which I have, which has really, really helped when we've had sit-down conversations. But if it's just impromptu and we've decided that, oh yeah, it's just fair game, we can bug the crap out of each other 24/7 and it will never stop. So I encourage you guys, sit down, decide how long the conversation is going to be, and think about your approach before you have conversations. Doing it on the phone is not okay.
Yeah, I had similar considerations. I had a slightly different approach in that I didn't speak with everyone live or in person. I kind of chose person by person how I thought they would best want me to approach it. With my mom, I called her on the phone because I thought she would want to at least have some kind of physical, verbal conversation with me, where some other people, including one of my brothers, it was a Facebook message, which sounds extremely impersonal, but I knew that he would feel put on the spot to answer to what I said in live conversation, where he actually expressed that he appreciated that he had the chance to think about it and type something back to me. So it just depended person by person. By far the most difficult thing, and this has to do with me being at real adult age, is that I didn't really have my parents was difficult, but by far the hardest part was with my children, and what they were going to think of me and how our relationship might change, especially considering I had a Christian mother who I was divorced from. And I thought a lot about it. I told them about how I'd always raised them to value science and critical thinking. And I told them, we've always talked about this. We started getting into some conversations about the Bible that were pretty surprisingly blunt, considering we were at least acting being Christians. And I said, I just don't really believe in God. And I told them, I'm going to be proud of you whether you're a Christian or not, no matter where you go in your life, as long as you're a decent person to other people and you think clearly and believe things for good reasons. Even if you believe that you love Jesus with all your heart, that's not going to impact your relationship with me, at least on my side. And I just made that really clear with them and told them, just ask me any questions whenever you're ready to. Did something similar with my parents, but that wasn't quite as difficult that time. Once I felt like I'd gone through and ticked through everybody who was important and needed to hear it from me personally, I actually put on Facebook just for people in the general community. And it got interesting with some people. We'll talk about that more later. I had been the principal of a Christian school in my community, and that was the first time a lot of those people had heard from me in that regard. So we'll talk about the backlash later.
Yeah, for me, they had pretty much already imposed the most strict social consequences they have, so I kind of went scorched earth on it, just told my mom, hey, guess what? I'm an atheist. What are you going to do about that? She didn't like it. I hardly talked to her anyways, once every 6 months or something like that. So it didn't matter too much, but I did come out to my daughter, who is 9 now, and it was kind of interesting the way I did that. I told her, so she believed in Santa, and I wasn't really a fan of that. I didn't want her to believe in Santa, because I feel like that kind of instills like an irrational belief, right? It's not critical thinking. But her mom wanted her to, so I just went along with it. So what ended up happening was one day she walks up to me, she says, Santa isn't real, is he? And I was like, now she's using critical thinking skills. Pretty happy about that. And I was like, why don't you tell me what else might not be real? Let's go through the list. And she said the tooth fairy, and I said, okay, keep going. She was like, I'm sorry to break the news to you. Tooth fairy isn't real, but she was like, God? And I was like, I don't believe in God, but I didn't want to push that on her because I was very young when I was forced to believe something. So I'm not going to force her to believe anything. She can believe what she wants. She goes to a Methodist church now, and I'm perfectly fine with that because they don't hate anybody for anything. But she's going to know how to think critically, and she's going to know that I am an atheist. So, yeah.
One of the biggest concerns of any of us is how our friends and family are going to react. Me personally, I didn't have a big reaction from any of my friends or family, but I know that that's not indicative of all atheists in the least bit. So I'm kind of curious about you guys. What kind of reactions did you have from your friends and family?
So I was kind of surprised. My dad he just asked me questions that he expected me to answer, which I was glad that he did it that way. So, asked me like, well, where did we come from? Why can we be here without a creator? And things like that. So I answered those things just because he honestly did want to know my viewpoint so he could connect with me. And I was really happy about that. Like I said, I was really lucky. With my mom, it was kind of similar, I guess, but it was a lot more like, why are you personally rejecting me? And I'm like, Mom, that has nothing to do with you. I love you, I'll always love you. And she says the same thing to me. So why is me believing something different or not believing something that you believe in, why is that a personal rejection? Because, you should know, and I know from you, that no matter what happens, that we love each other, and that's what's important. So those were some reactions that I've gotten. I won't, some of the creators know, but I won't point any fingers or anything, but I have some friends that are here, and I thought that they were some of my best friends in college, and I cut myself off from them because they're my smartest friends and the least indoctrinated, probably. Well, one of them, I don't know. But so they would have found out, and I didn't want to burden them with a secret. So I just didn't talk to them anymore, which was really weird. But now they're here, and that means a lot to me and they basically found my channel, and then messaged me and were like, "Oh, dude, yeah, like we're fans of your channel. It's all good. Like, what's the problem?" Basically, and that's when I decided to make my coming out type video that I made when that happened. So different reactions. I don't know. Is there going to be a flame war when I come out to everybody? Everybody is different, so we'll see.
Well, I've kind of experienced both the part that you did and then the latter part, which is when you come out to everybody. In my case, the second one was where it got really interesting. My mom was very understanding. She said she honestly wasn't surprised. I don't think I stayed closeted as well as I thought I might have been. And she said, "I'm sorry that you chose this," which I took issue with that language, but I let that slide. And she said, "I still love you and respect you and hope you find Jesus, but it is what it is." She'd already gone through that experience with my brother several years earlier, and asked if he was gay and all that stuff, and got that out of her system. With me, it was an entirely different situation. My kids, they got quiet for a while. Now one of them is openly atheist, and the other one says he wants to believe in God but really can't. The younger one, he's always been a critical thinker. From the time he was like 4 or 5, I'd put a thing. I always taught them not to believe in that stuff, but I'd put money under his pillow and say, "Hey, the tooth fairy brought it," and he'd be like, "Dad, it's not the tooth fairy. You put it there." They've just always had that mindset, and he knows how to make the connection that Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy are more or less like God, and he just kind of wants to believe in God. So I don't think it's really impacted my relationship with them in the long run, which is good. He is now 9 years old. He was a bit younger when this all came out, but yeah.
How many kids do you have?
4. 3 sons and a stepchild. The stepchild was never part of this at all. When I came out on a broader scale through Facebook, which I thought was just the easiest way to rip off the Band-Aid with everybody who wouldn't be offended if I talked to them personally, a lot of people were nicer than I thought they would be. Some were extremely vile, called me the Antichrist, said I was trying to lead people away from the Lord. They couldn't find any redeeming value in what I was doing or any redeeming motivations. But most were pretty nice. I got, of course, the same, "Where did the universe come from? Why don't you have any basis for morals? Why do you have faith in scientists?" All these weird questions. Somehow none of them knew how to pluralize the word scientist multiple times. I don't understand that, but that's neither here nor there. But one thing that really grabbed me, I was extremely busy the 2 weeks after I came out on Facebook. Some of it was just damage control. I finally just quit answering people who were saying stupid things. But dealing with people who had some level of hurt feelings or felt they had failed me in fellowship. But then I got a lot of private messages from people who said that they didn't really believe to varying levels, including 2 of my students from the Christian school who I'd always had kind of a heavy heart about the role I had played there and where I had led kids. And some of them said that they could kind of tell where I was in the years leading up to that announcement, and that gave them a lot of courage that not all adults believe what they see around them. So I'll talk about kind of my advice later, but there is a lot of value in coming out if you're in a position where you're able to do that, and it gives other people a lot of courage.
In my case, the reaction was disgust, hatred, and fear. They just have extreme fear, Jehovah's Witnesses in general, to the term apostate, which, incidentally, the etymology of that word is actually, the Greek word means runaway slave, which is apt, I think, So now I embrace it. I don't fear them anymore. They can fear me, that's fine, but I embrace the word apostate. I love that term, so.
Well, one thing that I wanted to bring up is Telltale and I and KC went out on a tour, and we saw a couple JW people standing on the corner. And one thing that Telltale told me was about, what would happen if he actually told them that he was an apostate. And I'm just wondering, can you let us know about that?
Sure. I was wondering, should I go up to these people? They're plenty nice people. Should I go up to them and should I say, hey, I'm an apostate, or hey, I'm disfellowshipped? Should I say that and get them to record it, put it on YouTube, show how they react? They would react with disgust and fear. There's no question. They would just turn around, not even look me in the face, wouldn't give me the time of day, pretend that I'm just not there. But I actually decided not to do that. I decided to leave them alone completely. And the reason for that is because Jehovah's Witnesses have a persecution complex. They are convinced everybody is out to get them. And I don't want to add to that. I want to attack their ideas and not make them feel personally attacked, right? I want to attack Jehovah's Witnesses, the philosophy, not Jehovah's Witnesses, the people, so.
The last question was about friends and family, but what about work? Did you guys suffer any kind of negative backlash at work?
So when I was first transitioning out of everything, I worked at a Christian homeless shelter, and it was my job to indoctrinate the little kids. So I worked with relatively minimal supervision, largely because I have a college degree and my boss didn't, so she was just like, you got it handled. So we watched a lot of VeggieTales where they said, and God wants us to do this with one sentence, and that's it. I was supposed to be leading 2 devotionals a day. I did 2 Bible studies where we watched completely irrelevant movies twice a week. Yeah. At one point, it ended up, my boss ended up finding out that I believed in evolution, and they took me to the boss, the head honcho, to see if I could still work there. And he gave me a few things to think about, and basically told me if you don't come back tomorrow saying that if a child walked up to you right now, you would tell them that that's totally, like what you think is totally not true, and that you would lead them to Christ right there. If you would not do that, you can't be here. So I came back the next day, and guess what I said? I want to keep my job. And so, sure, I'll say those things. Never once did I ever do it. So what I did instead is try to be a good influence on these kids. And when they'd ask me theological questions, I would ask them questions instead of answering. So it was I didn't know what street epistemology was at that point. But since then, it's been a bit better. I've worked with kids, and some of the teenagers I've worked with have been pretty religious. And usually it doesn't come up, but if they ask me, I'll say that I don't have a particular religion or anything, and make it pretty soft. If they keep asking, then and I think that they're able to kind of emotionally handle it, because some of them really aren't there. I'll say, I would call myself an atheist, and some of the kids say, me too, and that's what I got kicked out for. And that hits me really hard. A couple of times I said, I'm a secular humanist, and that means that I have these values and stuff, and the kids are like, well, you're nice to me, I don't care. It's the adults that are problematic. Now I'm completely out at my office, and my Catholic coworker that I sit next to follows my channel, and I released a video about anti-theism, and she came to work and she's like, and it's been like 5 months, so you really don't believe in God at all, huh? And I'm like, yeah, no. And she's like, wow. I'm like, it only took you 5 months.
For me, it was really easy at work. There's just, the environment there is not one where I fear for my job or for any repercussions whatsoever. In fact, more people at my work know about my YouTube channel than anywhere else, just because any content creator knows how much you have to rush to put out videos on a regular basis. So I find myself doing it during any break or lunch or anything like that. And people will ask me what I'm doing on my computer, and I'll start to tell them. And they keep asking these prodding questions. Once I went in the back stock room and was recording a sample for some voice actors for a cartoon, and this girl came back and was like, "Are you talking about the Bible?" I'm like, "Sort of." And she wouldn't stop asking questions just out of curiosity. I'm like, "Well, I have a YouTube channel, and you're probably not going to like it." And she said, "Oh, I'm a Christian, but it's all cool. It's just, I know church helps people sometimes, and why don't you tell me where it's at, and I'll go subscribe to it." And that was mostly the reaction I got. Nobody at my work took any issue. So it's been pretty much a non-issue for me. I put up a spaghetti monster on my wall. You can't have openly confrontational or provocative stuff on your cubicle wall at all. But I figured nobody knows what that is except people who are atheists. So
people who have been touched by his noodly appendage.
Exactly, yeah. So I found that there's a code. I put that up and it says I'm an atheist, and they come by and say, "Nice spaghetti monster," which means me too. So.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
That is really smart.
I like that. I like that story. It's a good story. So, yeah, there are some Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm in the tech industry. I'm sure many of you probably know that. I'm a software engineer, much like Godless Engineer over there. But yeah, so I've been in the tech industry since I was little, or younger at the very least. And there really aren't that many tech jobs in my state, in West Virginia. There is a Jehovah's Witness family who runs every POS system within 30 miles. Like every POS system, you'll see it on every cash register, every computer, everything, right? And of course, when I came out and got disfellowshipped, they wouldn't give me the time of day. So, yeah, it was kind of scorched earth in that case. I ended up having to move to Florida to find work eventually. But it all worked out in the end because a new tech company actually came into my town within the past year or two. And I got a job there, and it's better than working for a POS company. So, yeah.
POS stands for different things. What is the
Point of sale.
Point of sale. Yeah.
Somehow I knew that was going to be the question.
Yeah.
It works on both levels.
Well, we are getting kind of close to end of the panel, so we're going to have to skip a few questions we had planned, but maybe we can, hash those out later on.
Talk to us
video.
afterward, okay?
So, to kind of wrap up the panel and get to Q&A for people, what would be the best advice that you guys could give for somebody that's wanting to come out?
So I used the phrase mental health crisis earlier. That's exactly what being in the closet is. It doesn't matter if you're an atheist. It doesn't matter if you're LGBT. It doesn't matter if you are a Republican and you're in California. It doesn't matter if you are a liberal and you're anywhere in Texas except for Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, or Houston. So my main thing that I would say is immediately start developing coping skills. Community is one of the coping skills that will help. And I mean, religion does it really, really well, bringing together communities, and they try to help people find coping skills. They're often not evidence-based, and so they have some serious side effects, but there are evidence-based coping skills out there. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Secular Therapy Project. And so there are counselors in this area. If you guys need a counselor, which you should never be ashamed to seek out, then, send me a message or look up secular therapy project, and there's plenty of people that know exactly what you're going through, and they'll talk to you about that stuff. Don't run into a Christian counselor when you have that option. So develop coping skills, because every single person in this room is worth taking care of, as worthless as you can feel when you're told that you're scum, you're an atheist scumbag for believing or not believing what you do.
In answer to that question, I would focus more on the advice as far as thinking about how to come out, how you present it to other people. I would say the biggest single piece of advice I could give is just remember what it's like to be them and have that mindset. Because empathizing with the Christians is an easy thing to, or whatever religion you're coming out of, is an easy thing to forget to do. And it's really important. It was really important for me to think back to how are they going to view everything I'm saying, especially if I'm posting public stuff on Facebook or some other forum. It's easy to get really bold in those situations, to become the ugly atheist. And I think it's almost a stereotype that that's a typical thing to do when you're first coming out, is to go through the phase where you're just getting nasty on everything, and you forget what that sounds like. I can remember things sound really different to Christian ears that we can think are totally innocuous. And so just remember what your message sounds like to them, and just realize that you can't know what the reaction is going to be. I saw all kinds of reactions, I think we all have, and just plan it very, very carefully. You can't, there is good in coming out, but you can't take it back once you do, and you need to really consider where you're at in life and what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah, that's a really good point. People can be in the closet about a lot of things. They can be in the closet about being gay or trans or atheist or any number of things. You want to live your life as who you are, but you don't want your family to hate you or your friends. So there will come a point in time, put it off as long as you can, be in the closet as long as you can probably, but there will come a time when you cannot pretend anymore. And when that time comes, just know there is a community here who will be here for you. That is the most important thing I can stress. You have to find community, right?
Yeah, I would totally agree. If you're planning on coming out, or you're not fully out yet, you really have to read the situation and know your own situation. Like if you're financially dependent upon your parents or something like that, it may be beneficial to stay in the closet for a little bit until you're not that. So just use caution when doing it, while like I didn't suffer any kind of extreme reactions or other than Telltale and his scorched earth thing. We didn't really suffer that much, but it does happen, and so just use caution. But do know that there is a community, and you're not alone, and this forum is evidence of that.
I would add, if I could, I tell people this on my channel, and I think I could speak for the rest of you on this. We're just easily identifiable people as someone you come to advice for. So I would instantly answer any message somebody sent me asking for advice in this situation. I think most of the rest of us would too.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a very valuable thing to do if you're coming into it with no experience.
I appreciate everybody up here on the panel. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas.